Hey, what's going on guys, it's Brody of Brokemon. Welcome to my top 5 Generation 2 Pokemon. As I said in the first top 5 I made, this is based solely on opinion and not on factual evidence, so there's no research to back anything up. This is just who I believe to be the sickest 5 Pokemon from the second generation. Now let me know in the comments down below who your top 5 are from Generation 2, and without further ado, let's get right into this top 5. The second generation of Pokemon is a generation I didn't really even know about until later on in my young Pokemon life. Basically what ended up happening was after I played Pokemon Blue and I went to school and stuff, no one was really talking about Pokemon until Fire Red and Leaf Green came out. So I just thought, they remade these games or whatever, and that's all I really thought about it. I didn't know there was a game in between, the originals and then Fire Red and Leaf Green. And then I ended up getting this Pokemon Coliseum guidebook, which I read over and over and over again. I just basically memorized the game. And I didn't even know that was the second generation either. At that time, I thought it was the third generation. But I don't know how to explain this. Okay, so I thought the third generation was the second generation, if you know what I mean, because I saw Mudkip and those guys when Ruby and Sapphire came out, and I didn't know there was like a generation in between. So I thought like all these Pokemon, that the second gen Pokemon were third gen, but like I explained earlier, I thought third gen was second gen. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys, but yeah, I just didn't even know second gen existed. But now that I do know it exists, it had some awesome games like Coliseum and Pokemon XD. I love those games. But at the same time, I didn't really play Pokemon Crystal and Heart Gold or whatever, Gold and Crystal or whatever. I didn't play those. I only played the remakes, so those games don't have too much history for me. But yeah, anyways, let's get into this top 5. Kicking off my top 5 at number 5 is none other than Azumarill. Azumarill was always a Pokemon that I looked at and just thought to myself, why the heck would anyone ever use this thing? There was no purpose to using it. And then came Generation 6, where the Fairy type was added. Now when the Fairy type was added, some Pokemon that already existed got it added onto their already available types, such as, Azumarill being Water type and then being a Water Fairy type now in Generation 6. So the Fairy type definitely helped Azumarill out in becoming a better Pokemon, and it kind of brought Azumarill onto my radar as a Pokemon that I could potentially use. So I was watching a lot of competitive Pokemon battles, before I really got into making Pokemon videos, and I saw a lot of people were rocking Azumarill, and I was like, what the heck, why would anyone use Azumarill? And then I found out one thing that Azumarill has that makes it an extremely powerful Pokemon, and that is the ability Huge Power, which doubles Azumarill's base attack. Thanks to this ability in the Fairy type, Azumarill is in the OU tier, meaning Azumarill is one of the better Pokemon you can use in competitive battling. Azumarill has a wide variety of moves that you could teach it, such as Play Rough, you get priority with Aqua Jet, you can use Superpower for coverage. There's so many attacks you can use and there's so many items you can give it. I really like giving Azumarill Assault Vest and just making its special defense higher while I just launch out attacks at all the other opponent's Pokemon. Azumarill is a very powerful Pokemon, and if you guys have not tried it in competitive battling, I definitely recommend you give it a go because it will not disappoint you. And if there's any Pokemon that has a weakness to one of your attacks when you're Azumarill, well, you can pretty much guarantee that you're going to be doing a huge chunk of damage. So that is my number 5 Pokemon, and now let's move on to number 4. Up next at number 4 on my list is Chikorita. Chikorita is the grass-type Pokemon that you can start off with in the Generation 2 Pokemon games, and is also one of the 3-starter Pokemon that you can acquire in Pokemon Coliseum after Umbreon and Espeon. Chikorita isn't really a Pokemon that's super powerful and is really widely considered to be the worst of the 3 Generation 2 starter Pokemons, but I personally think it is the coolest and cutest looking of the 3 starters. As Chikorita evolves, I personally think it gets uglier and uglier, but if you don't evolve it, it kind of stays really bad, so you really don't have a choice. But I really don't like the look of its evolution. It evolves into Bayleaf at level 16 and then to Meganium at level 32, and as you guys can clearly see on the screen, like, which one of these is the cutest and which one of these look badass? I mean, it's Chikorita. Bayleaf doesn't look too bad, but Anyways, Chikorita is not a very good competitive Pokemon, of course. It is in a very, very bad tier. And as you can see, as its stats here, it doesn't really have much going for it. But I mean, just by personal appearance, like, look how it looks. The way it looks, it's adorable, and it just has a leaf on its head, and it looks really awesome. It's really cute, and I always choose Chikorita when I play any Generation 2 game, just because how I love Chikorita so much. But then I end up evolving it, and it kind of ruins it, and then it just kind of sucks. So, I mean, I would kind of recommend not choosing Chikorita unless you're just going to want to, you know, have a cute little buddy by your side. Because, I mean, Chikorita is just adorable. So, unfortunately, it's not really a great Pokemon to have. But at the same time, you can't deny that it just looks great. So, that's number 4 on my list, Chikorita. And now we're on to number 3. Coming in at number 3 on my list is the mighty, ferocious, Godzilla-like Tyranitar. Tyranitar is a Pokemon that kind of went on a roller coaster ride of how I felt about him throughout my Pokemon career. And I basically realized that he was kind of not that great midway through my life, but then I kind of figured out later that he's actually really good, and I'll kind of explain how that all happened. But anyways, to start it off, back in Pokemon Colosseum, when I wasn't too familiar with like the best Pokemon and stuff like that, because a lot of the Pokemon in Colosseum were kind of new to me, I saw that Tyranitar was the main boss. He was, you know, the big boss had a Tyranitar, Shadow Tyranitar, and he was like the ultimate Shadow Pokemon, so I was like, oh my lord. This thing here is the best Pokemon in the game. Because, I mean, look, these guys have Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. And those guys they're not the main boss. But those are some 3 beast Pokemon. But this guy's the main boss, and he has a freaking Tyranitar. So I was like, he's the best Pokemon. He knows Earthquake. You know, that was basically something they needed to learn in order to be beast, in my opinion. So he had Earthquake. I was like, holy crap, this thing is insane. So yeah, I basically thought he was the best Pokemon ever. But then as I got, you know, more experience into Pokemon, started getting my own, you know, actual Game Boy games where I could train up my own Pokemon properly. And, you know, finding out that it takes forever to get a Tyranitar. The Larvitar evolves into Pupitar at level 30, and then at level 55, Pupitar will finally turn into your Tyranitar. So basically, by that time in the game, you're basically about to fight the Elite Four. So I mean, you're basically going through the whole game with a Larvitar and a Pupitar, and then you get your Tyranitar at the very end. So it's not really, there's not really too much fun in that. You know, you want a Tyranitar the whole game. You can't have them right there at the end. It just doesn't work like that. But yeah, in Generation 6, I realized Tyranitar was actually a solid Pokemon because I was watching some competitive battles. A lot of people were using Tyranitar, and you know, the Sandstream stuff was really helping. Then I started competitive battling myself, and I was struggling. I never used Tyranitar on my team really, and then all of a sudden, I was getting swept left and right by Mega Charizard Y. And if you guys don't know, Mega Charizard Y has the ability Drought, which basically makes the sun go strong. You know, it's basically like Sunny Day when you switch in. It automatically does it. So it basically means Solar Beam turn 1, his fire attacks are boosted, and he's already got ridiculously high special attack. So I knew I was just screwed. Every time he got switched in, I would basically get my team swept because it was very frustrating. So I went on Google, looked up a really good counter, like how do you counter Charizard Y? And then, bam, it hit me. What am I thinking? You got Mega Tyranitar in this game. Like, holy crap. If you guys look at regular Tyranitar stats here, just look at them. Ridiculous stats. He has 600 total stats, but that every time a Pokemon Mega Evolves, that means they get an extra 100 stats. That's what Mega Evolution does. So Tyranitar basically goes up to 700 total stats, which is an insane amount, and he has Sandstream. So if I switch it in this Tyranitar, after the Charizard Y was already in, that means I could block out the sun with the sand, plus I had rock attacks that were ultra effective against Charizard. So I started using the Mega Tyranitar, and he was saving me so many times. He was a ridiculous Pokemon for me in competitive, and he still is. I mean, he's just an insane guy. I mean, look at him. He just looks like a beast. So yeah, use Mega Tyranitar if you're getting destroyed by Charizard Ys. Trust me, he just destroys them. So yeah, guys, that is number 3 on my list. Now we're moving on to number 2, which is a little bit interesting because it's going to be a duo. Coming in at number 2 on my list is the duo of Umbreon and Espeon. Now you guys might be curious as to why these two are put in the same thing and not separated into 2 different Pokemon. But that's just simply because they are literally up here for the same exact reason, and I feel like it would be a waste of a spot if I just put them in 2 different spots because they're literally the exact same story. So basically, when I was reading my Pokemon Colosseum guide back when I didn't even have a GameCube, I wanted Colosseum so bad, and then I finally got a GameCube, and I got Pokemon Colosseum, and I got to play it. And if you guys haven't played Colosseum, you know, you start off with an Umbreon and an Espeon, and they are just your partners throughout the whole thing, and the whole game is double battle, so you could basically just send them out together, and they just destroyed everyone. I loved Umbreon and Espeon. They're 2 of my favorite EV evolutions, and I mentioned it in previous videos. I say it in all my videos all the time. Evolutions are some of my favorite Pokemon in the game, and Umbreon and Espeon are definitely up there. They're the Moonlight and Sunlight Pokemon, you know, so they're kind of like counterparts, and they both kind of act as different types of Pokemon in competitive as well. They're both in the underused tier, which is kind of surprising to me, considering how useful they are to me when I use them in competitive battling. Espeon has really high special attack, really high speed, and you can hit him up with some Psychics, you know, with some Dazzling Gleams, got some good coverage there. And she also has the ability Magic Bounce, which means if someone uses like Stealth Rocks and you switch into them, you know, predict a Stealth Rock, switch in your Espeon, it'll bounce them right back the other way. Or even if they use Toxic or something like that, it'll bounce it right back at them. So Espeon's really good at countering like Toxics, Will-O-Wisps, any kind of hazards, you know, Espeon's insane. And Umbreon has just always been really good for me, and using him as a wall, especially defensive wall, because Umbreon is just, the special defense is off the charts. So Umbreon's basic tactics that I like to use is give him leftovers, give him Toxic, Wish, I use Play Nice, or what is it? Can't remember what the attack is called, but basically it means like you use their attack stat to do damage. So if someone's setting up a bunch of sword stances, you can basically just use that attack and you'll just kill them in one hit every time. So if you guys are curious as to who I like more out of these two, Espeon is a little bit better in my opinion. Like, I like Espeon a little bit more, but for the most part I would say they're pretty equal on the same level. So that's number 2. Now let's move on to the grand finale of number 1, and I'm sure most of you guys will not be surprised by this. Now this thing here at number 1, lads, this thing here, it is freaking lethal. It's off the rails. It is absolutely unbeatable. There is nothing you can do to beat it. It is just at the top of its level. There's nothing out there that's better than it. And you should just run if you ever see it. Just get out of there as fast as you can, because this thing will destroy you and your family. It's absolutely lethal. Coming in at number 1 is the absolutely lethal specimen that is Crobat. Now Crobat isn't just one of those annoying things that keeps popping up when you're walking through the caves. No, that's what it was at one point to me. Crobat was, well, I guess it was a Zubat that just kept popping up in the cave, and I was just like, why are you still popping up in my face? What are you doing? Get out of my face. But then one day, when I was playing through Pokemon Pearl, I decided, hey, why not catch this thing and maybe we can see how good it is at its full potential. So I end up catching it, I end up going through the game with it, and I finally get to a Crobat. And let me tell you guys, Crobat did some of the most unbelievable things for me on my journey in Pokemon Pearl when I was in grade 6. Basically, I was basically going through the entire Victory Road, alright? Victory Road. There's like Steelixes and stuff in there. Crobat beating Steelixes because all my other Pokemon were fainted. It was the last breath. I had nothing left. I had no revives. I had nothing. It was just Crobat, and he beat like a couple Steelixes. He was beating rock Pokemon. He was just beating everything. And that's when I realized how lethal he was. And then we get out of the Pokemon Victory Road. Okay, we get out. We go into the Elite Four. You know what's it called? Indigo Plateau. All right, we're in there. And out of nowhere, our rival shows up. I didn't even get to heal. I'm pretty sure I had Crobat and like a Roserade, who was like poisoned and not poisoned. It was like paralyzed. There was something wrong with the Roserade. We beat the entire team of my rival with Crobat. All right, Crobat swept. Crobat did everything. He is a legend, and you guys who watch my videos, watch all my Let's Plays, I use Crobat quite often. You know, I like to switch it up, but at the same time, you know, I just gotta use him. He's freaking lethal. He's off the rails. He's beast. So if you guys have never tried a Crobat before, you guys should definitely try it. He's not that great in competitive. He has some usability, I guess. He's super fast, as you can see there by his stats, but you know, just for playing through a game, he gets the job done. He can fly for you. He can fly you places. That's all you need. So yeah, guys, that is going to be the end of my top 5. That is the number 1 Crobat. If you guys were surprised by that, you probably don't watch my videos because, I mean, I always talk about him. So yeah. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for the top 5.